Good morning and welcome to my hobby bench one more time. And on the 21st of July I featured a video, or I released a video called The Beautiful Disaster. And it was an HP 49 VT rotary valve 4-stroke engine that a buddy of mine, Terry, had sent to me. Now in that video, and maybe even in subsequent ones, I pretty much said, I'm not going to invest any money in this engine just because it's cost prohibitive to get a new case from Mikoa. Well, as many things happen in my life, in this hobby, and they happen quickly, I sold an engine, some other things came through, and I did make an investment in this engine. So let's go to the table and I'll show you exactly what has transpired since that first video. Okay, so on the table here is my HP Beautiful Disaster HP VT49 engine. And I just released a video showing that I opened it up and got the bearing sizes for it, because the bearings are going to be replaced in either this or something else. So the something else is, as I was saying, I was looking, after I posted that video and after Terry had sent me this engine, I was looking, and both me and Jeremy, a buddy of mine, were looking for different alternatives for this. And of course, if you look on eBay, you're not going to just find cases, and we already knew that you could get a case, and I'm assuming, I guess, that it's a complete crankcase. It didn't say upper and lower, so it just said crankcase from Mikoa for $189, $186, something like that. And I was like, that's a pretty fair price to pay for that. So as you can see, I've got this thing mounted on my display fixture because that's pretty much what it does now. So we were looking and we found several options, and what ended up happening is I ended up buying this, which is a made in USA version of the HP 49 VT engine. Now it just so happened that the ad was stating things to the effect that, this was from a seller that basically didn't have a whole lot of other RC stuff, maybe a couple items, and this was from an estate sale, and it's saying that the person was a meticulous, modeler and knew how to take care of his engines and stuff. So there were many options. There was an HP made in Austria option that was a used engine that was, well under the $189 or $186, probably $190 something by the time you get shipping and everything and taxes for the case. So it looked okay, but this one looked a bit better. I was concerned that the finish would be very different because it just looked very different from this one. But honestly, the cases look quite similar but not quite the same. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to do a little bit of show and tell here. Now this is obviously the Mikoa made one because it says made in the USA. I don't think anybody other than Mikoa was making these engines. But I think the thing is, I want to do some comparing and contrasting of these things, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. Obviously the first thing we've got on the right hand side, or the left hand side of the engine, is made in Austria here, whereas here we've got, it looks like maybe laser engraved, or somehow it looks very clean. It says made in USA, and we still have the HP logo there. And aside from that, there's not a whole lot of differences on this side. There is one other difference, and it kind of extends to both sides. If you look here at the bottom of the rear of the case where the drive shaft is, because there's a drive shaft that turns a bevel gear here, and then a bevel gear up here that rotates the cylinder. You don't see anything here. But on this engine, you can actually see, it looks like how they've fitted that shaft in place or something. There's a protrusion coming through the case there. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it looks like that is a difference between the two cases. And then I thought, I was looking at this, and the exhaust is kind of, or this oil breather is kind of angled downward, and I was like, wow, is that broken or something? But no, actually both of them are kind of angled downward like that. So, and you've probably already noticed another major difference, which is the colors of the heads. I'm not entirely sure if the ones from Mikoa are always black, because there's two versions of the head. There's a non-bearing or non-roller bearing head, or a non-bearing head, and a roller bearing head. Now this might actually be the roller bearing head, because I know, I think I purchased a roller bearing head for one of my VTs years ago, and it was one of the 21s, I think. And so I purchased a roller bearing head from Mikoa at that time, and it was black. So I don't know if that means that this is a roller bearing head or not. I certainly know that this one is not. At least I don't even know that stock Austrian made ones ever had roller bearings in them. But so that's basically it. The thing that's kind of interesting also is you can see that it came on this Tatone, I think that's how you say that, Tatone mount. I think this actually became JTEC at some point. But it's actually an HP VT49 mount. It's not just some other mount that, you know, so they actually, this company, Tatone, I think that's how you say it, actually went through the trouble of making a mount specifically for these engines, as if at one time in the past there was enough volume and sales of these engines to justify something like that. Because I mean, to put a different little molding in here, and I don't know, maybe they can quickly swap out things in their molding or their casting to denote other engines. I don't know, it just seemed interesting that I've never seen one of these mounts specifically for this engine that has that. I mean, it'd be more common to see nothing written there, and it just happened to be the right size for this engine, and they were marketing it that way. But so that's kind of a cool thing. That's a very cool thing. So the question now is, I have twins. You know, one's operational, one isn't. So obviously I've got a seriously good parts engine in this one. And I don't really know the condition of this engine yet. I mean, it's got incredible. It turns over very smoothly. It's got really strong compression. So I'm certain that this is a runner. Now this carb looks a little bit dirty, so it might need a little bit of a cleanup with LA's Totally Awesome Cleaner to look all nice and shiny like this one. But aside from that, it doesn't have the stock nut, so it's got yet another one of these nuts, spinner nuts, that I can use for running engines. But I mean, the only other difference that I thought was very interesting on these castings is, on this casting it says VT49. The VT is on top. And on this casting it says 49 VT. Why? Why is that? Did they do that intentionally to differentiate the American-made ones? So why, you know, so I don't know. I think that was kind of curious. So we've got two external differences there, and of course I think the finish is slightly duller on this one, and this one looks like it's a little bit more highly polished, but that could just be patina over time too. I don't really know. So the question I'm asking myself is, obviously I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this engine. I'm going to take it off this mount, take it out there, you know, and give this engine a run. I haven't even removed the glow plug yet. Haven't done anything to this. Haven't blown through the carb. I mean, it's all free and operational. I just haven't done any of those things yet. It looks like I need to possibly reorient this fuel inlet because it's upright and this one is pointing more down that way. So that's something that should be fairly easy to do. It's a small area to try to get a very small thin wrench in there. I don't know, that could be a little bit harder to do than it sounds like, just because the nut there is so narrow, is so thin this way, that even my little mini opened in wrench set might have difficulty getting on that without hitting the rounded portion here. So I don't know. I mean, well, this may be one of those things where I just simply swap carbs out, just because I don't really want. And this carb was actually on here reversed, so the throttle arm was on this side, and I was like, why would you do that? I do know that you can simply just loosen this thing up, because I know I had mentioned in the other video about how I didn't like this was being pointed so close to the prop. I know you can loosen this thing up here, I'm pretty sure, and then just rotate your throttle arm down and reorient it very easily. But so the question is, obviously I can't run this engine. Run this engine, test it out, play with it with either this carb, that carb, both carbs. And one of these engines is getting the bearings replaced in it, because I'm going to be making a video for Boca on replacing the bearings in this engine, because that's what the disassembly video was all about, was getting the bearing sizes, because Boca's website did not have a listing for this engine. So I'll be replacing the bearings in one of these engines just to make a video of replacing the bearings. Is it this one or is it this one? I don't know. And the other thing that would be kind of fun to do too, if I have so much free time on my hands, would be to just mix and match parts. I mean, put this top head on this lower case. I mean, I don't know, is there any point in doing that? Probably not, but I mean, these are all options and things that I could do. So I think the very next video regarding this engine is probably going to be investigating the head and see if it's truly a roller bearing head, and then maybe just put it back on and get it on the stand and see if I can loosen this thing up and reorient this, or go ahead and swap carbs out so I can actually do a run with this engine. So that's the run, or that's the run. That's the video on the HP, I don't know if it's 49 VT or VT 49. I go by the manufacturer's box, I guess. Twins. So the Beautiful Disaster has a beautiful twin now that hopefully is fully operational. So thank you for watching.